Welcome to the Marketing Spotlight, where we share the career journeys of Michigan State University marketing alumni. I'm your host, Katie Sadler, and today with us we have Russell James, who is currently in brand management at Nike. Russell, thank you for joining us and welcome to the Marketing Spotlight.
Appreciate you having me, Katie.
We're really excited to have you and to learn a little bit about your experiences. We're going to try something a little bit different to start out the podcast today, and we want to do a rapid fire question set. So I guess to get us started, are you ready for this?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. What was your favorite undergraduate class?
Honestly, Gil Harrell's study abroad in London.
Wonderful. What class was the hardest for you?
Counting 201. I think we all have a horror story with that.
I think that might have been my hardest class too.
We made it out though.
We did. We made it through. What was your first job after graduating?
My first job after graduation was in a product role at Steelcase.
And what's your current job title?
I'm currently a brand manager on North America brand defining at Nike.
Who inspires you and why?
Ooh, that's a good one. Honestly, I think some of my biggest inspiration comes from my peers and my family. I think my brother is probably one of the biggest inspirations I have.
That's great. And what was the last book that you read?
Oh, Anti-Fragile by Nassim.
And what advice would you give your younger self?
Honestly, I would say stay curious and just stay hungry. I think the biggest distinguishing factor kind of in my success is just curiosity and perseverance. Being from the Midwest or going to Michigan State, we're always trying to take over some of these bigger institutions or entities, and we're kind of always fighting for a seat at those tables. It's a matter of persevering. You can redo that question.
Okay. Russell, describe yourself in 3 words.
I would describe myself as someone who's curious, creative, and calculated.
Great. I love that. So that ends our rapid fire. Thank you for participating. I think we have a lot of dots to connect as we go through the rest of the podcast. So that's a really great start.
Love it.
Can you kind of start us from the top? Why did you choose marketing?
I think for me, marketing was the best major that would allow me to kind of achieve my personal kind of passion in life, which is to tell stories. I grew up wanting to be a movie director, and kind of how that translated into marketing is at the end of the day, I just like telling stories that either inspire people or to connect people in unique ways. So all of my experiences have been rooted in kind of storytelling through a multitude of different mediums, whether it's curating a really cool event or telling a really powerful anthem story, or telling a story about someone that's almost overlooked or unheard. I think I've tried to make it my mission to give a voice to the folks who are often overlooked or underappreciated, undervalued. So everything that I want to do with marketing is just about telling stories that inspire people to be the best versions of themselves.
That's really interesting and inspirational. I think that as we think about storytelling, right, everybody has a unique story to tell, and bring those to life is one of the things that allows us to connect with people on a deeper level. So I absolutely love that that's one of the things that inspired you to be into marketing. Is there any interesting marketing lesson that you feel like you've learned since graduating?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, marketing lesson that I learned is honestly just the power of listening to the consumer. I think for a while in the marketing space, we've always been talking to consumers and trying to tell them, what they like and what they don't like. But if you really just kind of sit back and kind of embrace that, philosophy of curiosity, it's your job as a marketer to actually listen to the consumer more than you're speaking to them, because the more time you spend listening to them, the better you'll be able to actually serve them.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I think that that's really great advice, and something that is kind of hard to do until you have your feet on the ground and you're in a role where you're working with insights and working with building stories that are going to connect consumers and resonate with them. On a personal level, what have you done, or what do you currently do to continue to learn and grow? I think one of the hardest things for students as they graduate is figuring out how to continue their education, because I think for so long growing up, you are used to learning something new every day. And then as you get into the workforce, it's sometimes a little bit harder to do that. So what are some of the things that you do to stay on the top of your game?
Yeah, for sure. I think, I kind of pride myself in being a lifetime learner or a lifetime student. I think you're doing yourself a disservice if you think just because you graduated that you're kind of done kind of learning from folks. But what I do to stay sharp, honestly, is just be an active listener and try to find inspiration from a multitude of different areas. It's like I don't ever write somebody off for where they're from or what they do. I'm trying to like glean like insights from every conversation I have with folks or every city I'm visiting, kind of anything like big or small. I'm just asking myself, what can I learn in this moment that can kind of help me accomplish, one of my goals. So I think like one of the obvious things you can do is keep a pulse on what consumers care about, and that's either through, like, honestly, I think Twitter is like a pretty powerful way to get a real-time pulse of what kind of consumers care about. But then you can dive deeper into things, just through reading books. And I think it's important for folks to kind of diversify where they're getting their information from. Like, if everyone you're kind of learning game from, looks like you, is from where you're from, you actually don't have, as well-rounded of a worldview. And not having that, strong or wide perspective, it kind of puts you at a disadvantage in the marketing world, because, consumers in different locations have very different behaviors. So if you're trying to like get ahead of the curve and start to kind of predict some trends or whatever is going to be happening in the world, it's important that you look from kind of a diverse perspective or diverse areas to get your information and your knowledge.
Russell, it sounds like you have such a good grasp on how to have a healthy, active pulse on what's happening in the world, how to bring insights into what you're doing at work, how to really drive products that are going to make a difference in the lives of the consumers based on what consumers are asking for. Would you say that your previous role in product marketing had an influence on how you kind of look at your day-to-day ability to bring consumers' insights to life?
Yeah, I would actually. I think graduating from state, I had a really unique background on state where I like produced all the concerts for MSU through RHA, the Residence Halls Association. So my background for my entire tenure at state was, in the music world and like through a music lens. And then my internships were did like a Pepsi Frito-Lay internship in Sprint. And it's like on paper, all of those kind of ladder up to like my personal interests and just things that like naturally coincide with me. So to go to Steelcase, it's an office furniture company in West Michigan, which I have no connection to. I actually had to challenge myself from a marketing perspective of how can I stay curious in this role and learn an entirely new industry and field, and an entirely different consumer group in a world that I had no connection to. So kind of the curiosity that I honed at Steelcase kind of really came to life through, I guess, like almost like my ability to fall in love with whatever the task is at hand. Like it's definitely not where I thought I was going to end up immediately after school, but I'm forever grateful for the learnings there, because like from a storytelling perspective, it's not easy to make people care about office furniture, like a material color palette that goes on furniture. But I made it my job to, how can I make office furniture be cool? How can I make this sexy? How can I fall in love with this industry and just show the world that I'm a marketer and I'm a storyteller, and it doesn't matter kind of what product I'm telling a story around. Like I can tell a story that has this emotional connection with a consumer, regardless of what industry it is. And that's kind of set, that foundation that I built there is something that I've carried with me in all of my roles moving forward. It's like, how can I just fully immerse myself in whatever kind of like the industry or the task is at hand? And how can I kind of embrace, this ambiguity and just stay curious to find like unique ways to tell stories? And it served me in my career.
You said that so eloquently. And I think for our listeners, it's really important to point out that it's really difficult sometimes to be a marketer of a product that you're not a consumer of. It's sometimes hard to connect with it on that level. And it sounds like you've been able to do that in the different roles that you're in. And that's a skill that only the best marketers really have at their disposal, because it is sometimes hard to get in the right mindset of thinking, what does my consumer want, not what do I want? And so I think that's absolutely wonderful, and a huge skill set that you can continue to leverage throughout the rest of your career.
No, for sure.
And so you moved from product marketing into brand management, and you actually moved different industries when you did that. So Steelcase is more of a durable goods company. When you went into Nike, that's more of a CPG company. Can you tell us about what that transition was like for you?
For sure. So going from kind of furniture and architecture and design into the world of sports, it honestly was an easy jump because being in a marketing role at both of these companies, like I don't know if I'm gonna get in trouble to say it, but it's way harder to tell a story around office furniture than it is to around like the world's most elite, world-class athletes. So the skill set that I had from just a pure marketing and storytelling perspective just set me up for success at Nike. And then also just Nike is kind of in my DNA. Like I've been in love with the brand since I was growing up in Northeast Ohio, and I knew I always wanted to work for the brand. So it was a pretty kind of natural shift because I'm fortunate enough to have a profession that aligns with kind of my natural passions. So it was a pretty seamless transition for me. I actually felt like I was able to utilize my superpower even more at Nike, since they were just so much more receptive to disruptive ideas and just challenging the status quo that an older institution like a Steelcase compared to Nike being only 50 years old and kind of always on the cutting edge of marketing and innovation. All the disruptive ideas I wanted to kind of bring to life at Steelcase that I just wasn't able to get across the finish line. I've been pretty successful at pushing the boundaries at Nike on all of those disruptive opportunities, because this is the type of company where they're trying to kind of almost embody this underdog mentality that got Nike to where it is today. So I was able to really kind of let my entrepreneurial spirit thrive within the confines of Nike.
That's really exciting work. And I love how coming from a company so different actually gave you potentially even a stronger skill set, because you might have had more uphill battles to bring that brand to life in the youthful storytelling way that you're kind of talking about with Nike. So it sounds like that only made you stronger as a marketer over your career.
100%. That's exactly it.
And we have one last question for you today, Russell. Is there any advice that you wish you had had when you were a marketing student?
I think the biggest piece that I wish somebody told me from a marketing perspective is to actually kind of build just deeper relationships with folks outside of your major and outside of your college. It's obviously important to have a strong network of marketers and the other folks within the business college, whether it's accounting folks, finance folks, supply chain folks, et cetera. But kind of everything that I do on the side, whether it's kind of in like the startup and tech space, or it's in like a media space. It's like I really wish I had as deep of relationships as I do from kind of like my marketing peers as I would in some of the other colleges, because like your network really it's kind of one of the most important assets you have. So especially folks from like historically excluded backgrounds, it's like if you don't have exposure to folks with product development backgrounds, engineering backgrounds, like if those folks aren't in your natural network, college is the best place for you to build with those folks, where you might not have anything that you guys are going to be working on with each other during college, but you never know who you're going to call on 5 years down the road. Like I talked to a handful of folks from state on like a pretty intimate business level. And it's like, I know there's so many folks I can call on outside of marketing or the business college that are experts in their field. And it's like, I wish I had more of those. Like being able to tap your network to achieve your goals, is something that's never going to change. So I think it's just diversifying your network. Like, don't get caught up in folks just with the same background as you. Like, force yourself to get out of your comfort zone and really just embrace that ambiguity. I think you can't grow, if you're constantly in your comfort zone. So it's this idea of just getting comfortable being uncomfortable. It's like all of the most transformative growth happens outside of your comfort zone.
Russell, that's wonderful. I think that's great advice. And or being comfortable being uncomfortable, I think is something that everyone's had to face a little bit in the last year. But the more we can become comfortable being uncomfortable, it's really going to help people learn and try new things and be okay failing in some scenarios in order to really push the bounds of their capabilities. So I love that piece of advice. I'm gonna take that one with me.
For sure. I think we live in this world of like instant gratification and everybody being super polished and posing and looking cool. I think the most successful people this decade are going to be the folks who aren't afraid to fail, whether it's publicly or privately. But it's like I'm not afraid to put myself out there and be vulnerable. Like vulnerability is a superpower that's rarely kind of utilized, or people are reluctant to be vulnerable. But like the folks who are going to be vulnerable and aren't afraid to put themselves out there and really kind of embrace that, like I'm not afraid to fail, like I'm going to try this, I don't care if I look crazy, like I'm not trying to look cool, I'm just trying to grow, and I think that those people are going to be the folks that are set up to win this decade.
I absolutely agree. Russell, thank you so much for joining us today.
No, I appreciate you guys' time. I'm always happy to chat with some fellow Spartans.
Great. Well, for our listeners who are interested in connecting with Russell, you can find him on LinkedIn. He is more than happy to connect with you. Make sure you also check out other episodes of the Marketing Spotlight on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google, or YouTube. We'll see you next time.